record this.
I don't know what's going on here.
Right, we've got a few joining. When everyone's muted, there we go. Right, it looks like we've got a few here tonight. So thanks everyone for joining us today. My name's Rachel Boyle. I'm the Executive Director at the New Zealand Chamber, and I'm really pleased that you could join us for our first virtual whisky tasting. Now I'd like to introduce our experts from Brown-Forman this evening. We've got Grant Sharon, who's the Advocacy Director. Give us a wave, Grant. And Grant is joining us from Australia. And then we've got Joseph Hayward, who's here in Singapore and works on brand advocacy. Hi, Joe.
Hey.
A little bit of housekeeping for everyone. This session, we've set this up as a Zoom meeting. So that means you can be seen by other people on the session. So if you don't want to be seen, just make sure you switch off your video. And while Grant and Joseph are presenting, we're just going to turn off everyone's microphones, but feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions, and we'll make sure we're checking those throughout the session. And we'll also have a bit of free chat at the end. We've got some great prizes to give away tonight, so do be ready to answer on the chat if you want to win one of those. But now I'll hand over to Grant to have a bit of fun, do some tasting, and we can all learn a bit more about whiskey.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Yeah, great to be here with you all tonight, and excited to chat all things American whiskey. So what you're going to need for tonight, if you are going to be tasting with us and you'd like to make a highball, you're going to need a few things to rock and roll through the session. So you would have received your mini pack full of little samples. So have those ready to go. I'm going to hand over to the rock star Joe in Singapore in a second, and he's going to show you how to make a highball. So to enjoy a highball tonight, if you have a nice highball glass, but if you don't have a highball at home, you can do it in a low ball glass, so that's cool. Some ice, and if you've got some citrus at home, either lemon or lime, that will add a bit of bonus. And supporting us tonight are our great friends from New Zealand, East Imperial. So you'll need to have your East Imperial mixer. So you would have got 2 in your great pack. So yeah, that's what you're going to need tonight. And also to taste some of the whiskey. So if you want to taste some of the whiskey as I take you through the Jack Daniel distillery products, and also Woodford Reserve, you'll need a spare glass just to taste some whiskey tonight. So so tonight we're going to look to kick off things with a highball, and we'll take you through the history and heritage of these 2 great distilleries. So give you a few minutes to get yourself ready to rock and roll, to get those things sorted. So with your ice, and then we'll look to hand over to Joseph in Singapore. Looking good over in Singapore there, Joseph. So Joseph, I'll hand it over to you. Show the folks how to make a highball to kick us off. And before I go over to you, Joe, tonight, informal, guys, you got any questions, use the chat function. I'm happy to give you some rugby sort of scores from the 90s, my highlights from the 95 World Cup if you want, and through. But no, I'm joking. Let's keep it a whiskey. I suppose I forgot to do the informal. Rachel did introduce me. So, I look after things, advocacy across the region here in Australia. I'm based in Australia tonight, and look after all things Brown-Forman, this great whiskey company. We're a 6th-generation family business based out of Louisville, Kentucky, and we've been making whiskey for about 150 years now. And the company started with a brand called Old Forester, which is this brand here, the first bottled bourbon in the United States, the only brand to be produced before, during, and after Prohibition. So we have a long heritage of making great American whiskey, and we've acquired many brands along the way and created brands. And we're going to talk about one of those brands that we created along the way, Woodford Reserve in particular tonight. So we're going to talk about 2 great brands in our portfolio, Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey and Woodford Reserve. And we're going to give you some insight to these 2 great distilleries. But Joe, enough of me nattering on. Let's get onto a highball. Let's get some liquid on lips. So Joe, I'll throw it over to you to get the night started, to show everybody how to make a simple highball on Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey, and with our great partnership with East Imperial. So over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Grant. So highball's a fairly easy cocktail, but it's underestimated a little bit. It's a little more than just a whiskey soda. But I will understand that we're making cocktails at home, so I'll just give you a few tips to kind of elevate that, if you will. So first, always chill your glass in mixers if you can. If not, that's okay. The main thing that you're going to want to do is use a lot of ice. If you think about what a highball is for, and you think about drinking it in Singapore, it's a very crisp, refreshing cocktail. And you definitely want it to be nice and cold. So we're just going to fill that up as much as we can. All right, from there, we're just going to add our whiskey. I'm going to measure mine out. A lot of bartenders use fancy jiggers, but for at-home enthusiasts, we promote with using some baking tools. 1 tablespoon is about 15 ml, so I use about 3 of these. I think you guys have a measured out pour in your miniature bottle. Just make sure you leave a little bit of that left over so you can taste with Grant later on. So, all right, so let's get to the good stuff here. All right. Oop. A little bit over pour there. All right, then after that, we're just gonna move into the ginger ale aspect. So we're using tie-dry ginger. And the key here is kind of the ratio. One thing that I really like about the East Imperial products is the single serving size, so it always keeps its carbonation, and it tends to be just the right amount for one good highball. Then after that, we just need to cut us a little citrus. I'm gonna go with some lime just to complement the ginger, and then drop it right in. Right? And there we have it. All right, guys, cheers. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on. Okay, so now that we've created that, we're gonna talk a little bit about American Whiskey 101. So when you talk about American whiskey, it's actually a very diverse category, but 95% of all the American whiskey is created in Kentucky and Tennessee. And the main 2 categories are actually gonna be bourbon and Tennessee whiskey. When you talk about American whiskey, it's I like to talk about the ABCs, if you will. A is, of course, it has to be made in America, and that could be anywhere in America. It could be Hawaii, it could be Alaska, although we're not exactly known for whiskey making. It has to be in a new charred oak barrel, B. We don't reuse barrels in America. Everything's always from a brand new barrel to exemplify the wood flavor. And then C, it's got to be 51% or more corn, if you will. And that's kind of the main takeaways. There's a lot more rules than that, but we don't want to make it overly complicated. And with that, I'll pass it on to Grant to talk about our Jack Daniel's series. I think Grant's still on mute there.
Unmute myself. Yeah, just getting used to this new technology. It's a brave new world, Joe. Thank you. No, thanks, Joe. You're refreshing. Yeah, Gentleman Jack, ginger ale or ginger beer. Match made in heaven. Like I said, Joe, highballs in a hot climate with American whiskey works really well. So, yeah, leave a bit of your Gentleman Jack there, James. I see you guys are getting a bit happy on the pour, but use the ginger ale. Leave about a thumb in it if you want to taste the Gentleman Jack neat, which we'll take you through in a tasting in a second. But yeah, that's delicious. I think American whiskey. Highball, highball is becoming this great craze now globally in terms of, that people are saying the gin and tonic's dead. Don't say that to the gin producer, but essentially people are looking for this new evolution of a refreshing highball, and American whiskey lends itself. So cheers everybody out there. And let me share my screen, and I'll ask Monica just to give me the ability to share and hand it over. And I'm just going to take you through a journey, and we're going to talk all things Jack Daniel's first, and I've got a couple of pretty pictures to show you and paint a picture of this great distillery where this great whiskey comes from. So let me, thanks Monica, we're ready to rock. I'll look to share that up. So let me get onto my present mode and present it up. So, let me go. Something's happened. Cool, alrighty. So let me just escape out of that. I think 2 seconds. Now I'm struggling to see everybody. Look at that technology at its worst tonight. So let me come out. Alrighty, let me just quickly, so I can see everybody. I'm just gonna make this smaller and 2 ticks. There we go. Look at that. Okay, so we're gonna welcome to Jack. There we go. Technology back on track. I'm just gonna play a quick video. You know, Jack Daniel's is one of these brands from you know, bikers to bankers, from fine establishments to questionable joints. It's one of these brands that are truly, you know, a part of American DNA and culture. And I'm just gonna kick off and play a little video to paint a great little picture around Jack Daniel's. So let me kick it off, and we'll go from there.
Sell a bottle of Jack Daniel's stashed in that cupboard.
Drink it. That's the nectar of the gods, baby. Sinatra. It was at a party,
And he was standing at the bar by himself. What are you drinking, kid? Whatever you're drinking, Frank. And he turned to the bartender and said, Jack Daniels.
Can you get around over here?
Jack Daniels, countries.
Sounds like a great idea.
I think when people see you on tour, that's not the image they have in their head, is you in a minivan.
not with, like, the bottle of Jack Daniels going,
Where the hell is my Jack Daniels sampler baskets?
What did your one go-to item on the plane?
Probably Jack Daniels.
Brian has become more like me as the series has gone along. You know, when I switched from martinis to Jack Daniels, he switched.
I've had similar failures, and I was mentored by a fellow named Jack Daniels. Jack and I had a very good relationship in its purest form.
Want to do a couple shots?
Well,
You come off a private plane. Look at this.
Bottle of Jack Daniels.
it's only rock and roll.
You could say Eric Church hit Nashville like a shot of Jack Daniels.
I want a paps and a shot of Jack.
And a shot of Jack straight up.
Make that 2 shots of you.
And so I had this idea of flying in on a bottle of Jack Daniels. And the dude turns around and goes, that's a great idea.
Hey, Tommy. 2 Jacks, please. Irish whiskey or Scotch whiskey?
I like Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
What is the story with the Jack straight just like that? I mean, have you had it? Absolutely.
You know, that's you know, just a snapshot of this great American brand that's been crafted since 1866 in one single place. You know, we haven't made Jack Daniel Tennessee whiskey anywhere else in the world, and it was created by this cat in the middle of the picture here, the Jasper Newton Daniel, the guy with the fedora hat in the middle of the picture. Jack Daniel only grew to 5'2", so he was a bit of a pocket rocket of an individual, lots of life. He was mentored by a gentleman by the name of Nathan Nearest Green, who showed Jack and taught Jack how to craft great Tennessee whiskey at a very, very early age. This picture is one of the original pictures of his distilling crew dating back to around 1870s. So, you know, Jack Daniel has been made with craft and care ever since that day when Jack created this distillery back in 1866 with his mentor, Nearest Green. So we're very proud of that fact. We a single distillery operation made we make Jack Daniel whiskey how in the heritage of how Jack Daniel made it back in that day, but now we make whiskey how Jack Wishy made. You know, and that we understand how to make consistent batches every time, and making sure that we are constantly you know, perfecting the craft of what Jack set up back in the day. So we still use his original recipe. We still use the art form of what was laid down by this original crew to this day. You know, Jack was an interesting guy, and he's like, "Hey, Grant, why you got a picture of a safe here and a desk? You know, what are you talking about in this one?" So essentially, this is the original office that dates back to the Jack Daniel distillery, and this is the only building that still remained at our property. You know, there's a lot of fires, and we closed for prohibition for about 20 years in the US, or a bit longer in Tennessee, about 30 years, where we couldn't make whiskey. This is Jack's original office, and this is where Jack would come into work. Well, not too early at most times. He'd come into work pretty late. At the desk would sit his nephew, Lem Motlow, who'd open the office and open the safe to the left-hand side of the picture. Jack came into work early one day. Lem wasn't sitting at the desk. Jack tried to open up the safe, and Jack Daniel, pocket rocket 5.2 of an individual, tried to open the safe. It's a letter combination, not a number, and he got kind of confused. He had a couple of cheeky Jack Daniels the night before, couldn't open the safe, got pretty angry, got kind of bummed, couldn't open the safe, kicked the safe and broke his toe on his left foot, and this led to his death. About 10 years later, Jack Daniel lost his life through kicking a safe and getting work too early. So there's a moral of the story there. For us at the Jack Daniel distillery, we don't get to work too early, and please don't kick any safes in anger. If Jack Daniel only put his foot in a bucket of Jack Daniel whiskey, it would have been a natural antiseptic, but he was too stubborn, so he didn't tell anybody. We'd love to see you down in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Please come visit us. I'll take you to, one of our crew will take you to Jack's Tombstone, and this is his tombstone in Lynchburg, Tennessee. And we're a one-horse town and the horse is dead. It's a beautiful part of the world. And when Mr. 90 decides to go away, please come and see us. Reach out to us at Brown-Forman. We'd love to show you around. This is the second most visited tombstone in the world. Number one is the Doors tombstone in Paris and I've just lost his name. Somebody help me. The lead singer, it just lost it. The Doors lead singer in Paris. And then Jack Daniel tombstone is the second most. Maybe somebody in the chat function might be able to remind me. Jim Morris, Jimmy Morris. Anyway, come off mute if you've got it. But our second most visited tombstone in the world. This is our crew now. We've only had 7 heads of production making our whiskey in over 154 years. This is the crew now, one of our barrel crew. They roll the barrels in by hand, so still done in a very old school way at the Jack Daniel distillery. This is Jeff and Chris, our distilling team, or heads up our production at Jack Daniel's. Jeff on the left is our 7th master distiller, and on the right is a guy called Chris. He's our assistant master distiller, and his grandfather was the 5th master distiller. I'm going to show another video just to paint a picture around these folks in Lynchburg, Tennessee, and then we'll get on to tasting some whiskey. I know you've got a highball, so we'll take it at our leisure, of course, but we'll get into tasting some Jack Daniel's neat. So I'm going to play a picture just to paint a picture about the folk from Lynchburg, Tennessee. So another little quick bit.
This is Lynchburg, Tennessee. This is how many people were born here. This many are 5th generation. This is how many are named Hiawatha Kitty McGee. He keeps the town dry. They'd prefer it a little wet. This many are proud of what we make here. This is how many will go around bragging about it. This is our town. If you can't get here, just look for one of our postcards. We send them all over. They look like this.
So thanks to the team in Singapore, Brown-Forman. Thanks for everyone for grabbing a pack of, you got a little mini postcard in there tonight. Jack Daniel's is this brand, now distributed in major markets around the world, coming from this one-horse town. This is a Lynchburg, Tennessee. Like I said, it's a one-horse town and the horse is dead. We only have 1 set of traffic lights. We put a second traffic light in that traffic light system about 10 years ago. So you can see things happen very, very slowly in Lynchburg, Tennessee. You see gridlock, nothing is much happening. If you come visit us in Lynchburg, Tennessee, we are dry county still to this day. So we can make Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey, but you're not going to be able to enjoy Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey in Lynchburg, Tennessee. You can go to Nashville, Tennessee. I like to call that Smashville. You can have a good time in Nashville, Tennessee. So if any of you haven't been to Nashville, Tennessee, it's probably one of the funnest cities you'll ever visit in the world. It's fun. It's the home of country music, and you'll have a great time, and you can drink plenty of Jack Daniels there. But Lynchburg, Tennessee, to this day is a dry county due to a prohibition law that was passed in Tennessee in around 1911. Like I said, it's a beautiful part of the world. You can see here rolling green hills, and in the picture here you can see one of our warehousing, one of our rick houses where we store our whiskey at the distillery. We have 92 of these warehouses on our property in Lynchburg, Tennessee. So everything is distilled and bottled in Lynchburg, Tennessee. So let's, if anybody hasn't got your highball, and I'll just, we'll go back, the highball that Joe made for you was, you got your glass full of ice. You would have dropped in some Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack into it and leave, use about sort of 2/3 of that to your highball full a highball full of ice, and then top that up with your East Imperial ginger ale. So for you that folks that hadn't had a chance to make a highball, that's how you want to do it. So ginger ale, the Thai ginger from our friends at East Imperial, about 2/3 of your Gentleman Jack, loads of ice, drop it in there, and you're ready to go for your highball. So cheers again, Joe. It's refreshing. I'm loving this East Imperial Jack Daniels. So highballs are a great way to drink. So I'll just have another sip. To make great whiskey, you're going to need some simple things. You're going to need water, you're going to need grain, you're going to distill. I'm going to take you through some processes how to make great American whiskey. Joe alluded to the ABC of American whiskey. Bourbon is the native spirit of the United States. And we sort of go by the rules of the ABC. A has to be made in America, B uses new handcrafted barrels, and C has to use at least 51% corn in the grain bill. Whiskies from the old world, Scotch whiskey, for example, single malt whiskey, will use one single grain type, malted barley. But the US, we want it different. You know, we want to mix it up. We want to get different flavors. So we'll use that native corn, which is native to the Americas. We'll combine rye and malted barley and combine that in our mash bill and grain bill. At Jack Daniels, we'll use a combination of 80% corn, 8% rye, and 12% malted barley. And we'll graft all those grains together, mash them into grind them into a powder, and then we'll go through the process of making whiskey. But why Jack Daniel moved to Lynchburg, Tennessee is because we need good water to make whiskey. Jack Daniel was making whiskey with his mentor, Nearest Green, about 10 miles down the road in Lois. And he heard of illicit distillers making whiskey out of this water source in Lynchburg, Tennessee, which is 10 miles down the road from where he was, learning the craft of making whiskey with Nathan Nearest. So Jack, explored and eventually bought the property in the late 1860s and started his own distillery, the Jack Daniel Distillery. The water source in Lynchburg, Tennessee, and in Tennessee and Kentucky, is rich in minerality, and it's iron-free. And essentially, if you have iron in your whiskey or you have iron in your product, it turns it bad. Essentially, what illicit distillers used to do when they used to have competition down the road, they used to wait for nightfall and take a nail and put it in their barrels, and that nail would have iron in it, and that would turn that whiskey black. So that was where the term spike your drink would come from, or spike your product would come from, these cats throwing nails in barrels and spiking their products. Obviously, there's an unfortunate modern connotation for that, but that's originally where that term came from, spiking your drink or spiking your barrel. So we have a great water source in Lynchburg, Tennessee. This water comes through the ground at 13 degrees all year round. So now in Lynchburg, in Tennessee, you can't visit us now, but it's hot as hell. And you want to get there in your boardies and have a swim, and you come in the winter, you feel like you're in a German sauna. Well, that's a bit of a dodgy time in German sauna, but you almost want to feel like you're in a sauna going forward. So this water is amazing. And all we do is we filter this water through a sieve, and we don't treat the water. So we have this great water that's it's like water on Barocca. It's amazing. So as I touched on, in American whiskey, we'll use a combination of grain, corn, rye, malted barley. At Jack Daniels, we'll use a high percentage of corn versus a traditional bourbon, which we'll talk about in a second. So corn's going to give you that creaminess front palate. Rye is our flavor grain. That's going to give you spice. And malted barley is more important for us to kickstart fermentation. So yeast eats those sugars in those grains once we've broken them down. And what we're left with is a beer around 6 to 9% from where we distill and create whiskey. So enough talk for now. Let's get our Gentleman Jack out and let's try some Gentleman Jack. So if you've got any of your Gentleman Jack left in the bottle, I'll probably James, and a few of the cats might have got a liberal. So just to let you know, we are drinking roughly about 2 standard drinks. If you have 2 highballs and if you're going to sample 4 drinks, it's going to be just over 2 standard drinks. So just be mindful of how much you're drinking. Obviously, it's a tasting, not a drinking outside of it. But if it is Wednesday night, let your hair down. But just be mindful how much you're potentially tasting. You don't have to drink anything. At least if you've got your product, you can smell it. So let's pour a little bit, just a splash of Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack, that first whiskey that we tried with a highball. So a delicious in highball. So this is our Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack. Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack is the first product we made at Jack Daniel's, was after Prohibition was repealed in the 38. So we hadn't made whiskey, a different whiskey at Jack Daniels from 1938 until 1988. We only made one single type, which was Jack Daniels Old Number 7. Nobody was drinking American whiskey, through the 80s and 90s. So we thought, we need to make a lighter style of Jack Daniels. And that's why we came up with Gentleman Jack. So we'll talk about charcoal mellowing in a second. We'll get more clarity on what I'm saying. So if you've got some Gentleman Jack in your glass, I want you to just how you smell a spirit, or it's going to be different to wine. You actually want to breathe through your mouth, and you want to inhale all those products. So don't put your snozzy right in and breathe through your nose. That's going to knock your factory gland out. But once you smell that product, you want to smell, but breathe through your mouth, okay? And what you're going to get in American whiskey, Jack Daniels Gentleman Jack, this particular product, it's going to be a lot of vanilla and toffee and butterscotch. Because we charcoal mellow this product twice, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, you're going to have this lighter style of Jack Daniels. So as you've seen tonight, it's perfectly mixed in a highball. So let's give that a smell and a taste. And I'm just going to bring up my chat function so I can see any chats coming up, so I can see if there's any chat coming through. So let's give that a smell and then see what we think, and then give us a taste. Let's give that a taste and get some Gentleman Jack on the palate. As you taste Gentleman Jack, you're going to get that beautiful vanilla and toffee and butterscotch coming from that product, okay? So this is going to be sort of front palate style whiskey, works exceptionally well. It's going to work exceptionally well in mixing with products. So great in a highball, great in things like whiskey sours and so forth. So a really entry-level whiskey, a lighter style of American whiskey that works well to blending in drinks. So what is Tennessee whiskey, and why is Jack Daniels called a Tennessee whiskey and not a bourbon? This is a shot of our fermentation where we are kickstarting how to create alcohol. This is one of our crew, in terms of who's in charge of one of the distilling team, looking at one of our fermenters. So this is the process of creating that distiller's beer. So essentially, after about 6 days, we've left with a distiller's beer, about 6 to 9%. From there, we put it in a still. So we want to create an alcohol, a distilled product. We put it in a column copper still, and we distill to about 140 proof, 70%. And what happens is whiskey comes off the still just like that. Moonshine, White Dog, White Lightning. Now this stuff will bite you in the ass, okay? This is not whiskey. This is new make spirit coming off the still. If we had to put this whiskey in a barrel and a new age barrel, we would be bourbon. But at Jack Daniels, we don't want to be a bourbon. We want to be a Tennessee whiskey. So we take it one step further, and we use a process called the Lincoln County process, which is native to Tennessee. We take a sugar maple wood. It looks like a Jenga stack. Essentially, it's like a big Jenga stack. It's sugar maple wood, native to Tennessee. We take whiskey for extraction. We take that new make product as an accelerant, and we put it on, and we burn those Jenga stacks, and we create an activated charcoal pellets after about 45 minutes. This is Tracy. I never understand what he says. I've known him for a long time now. He's got such a thick Tennessean accent that I always just agree. He looks after a program. This step alone will cost us $1 million a year. So it's a very expensive process to do. Essentially, we burn it for 45 minutes. This is Darren. He's got an easier name. I can understand him a bit more. Essentially done with a hose pipe. We'll hose it down, and then we'll drop every single drop of new make spirit through these big mellowing vats. They're about, it takes anything between 7 to 12 days for one single drop to come out the bottom. Essentially what it does, it removes, if you had to taste this new make spirit, it's tasty. It's really cool. I like it. But once you taste the new make product, it's exactly the same. I wish I had it there for you tonight, but when you had to try smell the new make after charcoal mellowing, it's just lots of florals, lots of tropical notes. Because we use a live cultivated heath strain at Jack Daniels, you're going to get a beautiful banana note to it. And if you've got any of that Gentleman Jack left in your glass, you can smell it, and you'll probably start picking up that sort of beautiful overripe banana coming through. So this is what makes Jack Daniels a Tennessee whiskey and not a bourbon. So that you can see Darren looking down into the charcoal mellowing vats. And it takes a while. So this basically process is why we're a Tennessee whiskey and not a bourbon. And that's our first whiskey with in a highball and the lighter style of Jack Daniels, like we like to call it. Any questions there? I just want to see if I can see the chat function there. I'll bring it up. Well, all good. Oh, there's the chat. There we go. Done. Jim Morrison. That's it. Thank you, Kay Russell. Jim Morrison, The Doors. Thank you. How can I forget that? Maybe too many misspent years at beach parties down the west coast of Africa. That's probably why I missed it. What's the name of the wood? So the name of the wood we use for charcoal mellowing is sugar maple wood, and we use two types of wood at our distillery at Jack Daniel's. And the second type of wood we use to make our barrels. So really, 30% of our flavor is going to come from charcoal mellowing, live cultivated heat strain, the water source, and the grain type. But really, 70% of flavor, 100% of color from American whiskey will come from a barrel. Brown-Forman, Jack Daniel, Woodford Reserve, we're the only company to handcraft our own barrels. And this is where you're going to get the majority of flavor. 70%, up to 70% of flavor, 100% of color. All the color we have in a bottle of Jack Daniel's and any American product is 100% naturally flavored. We will not put any E150 into the product, so it'll all come from a barrel. So we use a white American oak. We have 4 of our own mills up in the northwest of the United States, and we produce anything from grain to glass from our barrel. So making a barrel, it's a number one ingredient. It gives us all that mojo that we're looking for. This is Dan, who's one of our coopers. It's a 4-year apprenticeship to become a cooper, and to make a barrel, it's between 31 to 33 staves, a 200-liter barrel. We'll raise the barrel, we'll toast it. We can't show you that process, it's a proprietary process, and then we'll char it. And basically, this 2-step process between toasting and charring will naturally caramelize the wood, okay? And what that does, that product will come off the still, the new make spirit before, then we mellow it, and then we'll put it in one of these barrels within 48 hours. Hot days and cold nights at our distillery, that new make will push through that charcoal filter. I think I've got this is just in case a couple of dodgy kids. No, I'm joking. No. We've got a stave here, and that's the inside of a barrel. If I hold it up to the camera, you can see that the charcoals come off. What happens, that whiskey passes through that filter, and would sit in the barrel during the day, and you can probably see that red line, that soak line, and that's after about 4 to 5 years. We don't go and age. Jack Daniel's and American whiskey is ready when it's ready. 1 year in Tennessee is equivalent to about 4 to 5 years of aging in a colder climate. So we don't go on age, we go on flavor. You know, it's kind of simple. You know, some of us mature quicker than others. Gee, I still think I'm 16, but I'm 47 this year, so I'm kind of screwed. So, but you know, it's all about flavor and consistency. How do you get the consistency over the years? Good question. And so essentially what our process in terms of consistency, we have live cultivated heat strain that we control from that process. We understand the process of making a consistent beer. And then in terms of our cut point on our still is very precise. And the barrel spec, our barrel specs again are very precise in terms of how we make a certain barrel. Toast levels, roughly about 16 minutes and a 25-second char. So it's all about precision. And then consistency comes from mingling, you know, essentially you would call it blending in the old world, putting barrels together to create consistent flavor profile. So every step of our way is very consistent from how we go. Sure, over the years, certain master distillers will have a different spin on how to bring a Jack Daniel's product together. But over the years, you know, our number one thing of our master distiller is not to screw up Jack Daniel's Old Number 7. So that was their number one primary role. So we tried one of our first evolutions of Jack Daniel's whiskey, Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack you got in the pack. Beautiful and light. I hope you're all enjoying it. You know, it's one of my favorites, depending how you wake up in the morning. But I really enjoy Gentleman Jack, that lighter style. But at Jack Daniel's, you know, we want to make whiskey from LDA, legal drinking age, of course, to D&D, damn near dead. So we want to have whiskey in our portfolio that will span, you know, different taste profiles. So we're going to go from our lighter style of Jack Daniel's, which is our Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack. And hopefully you're still enjoying your highball. I certainly am. I'll just take a sip. Great with Eastern Imperial. Now we're going to try the bolder style of Jack Daniel's. So we're going to try the single barrel. So we're going to go from our lighter style of Jack Daniel's and we're going to try our bolder one. So if you've got any Gentleman Jack left over, you can obviously have a little taste again, or just put it in a glass. You don't have to drink all of it. And now we're going to try the bolder style of Jack Daniels. I just want you to put in just a splash of Jack Daniels single barrel, and we're going to get the difference. If you've got 2 glasses, you can sample them or smell them side by side, and just to see the different nuances. So I'm just going to see the question coming up here. Did Jack Daniels come up with the idea of charcoal mellowing? No, it's the Tennessee way, and it's actually from Frontier. A process that actually came from the old world. Essentially, what dodgy distillers used to do on the frontier, they used to take their new make spirit and put it in charcoal bags and shake it and filter and squeeze it through. And basically, it's like a Brita filter. If you think about it at home, if you put it through a carbon filter or charcoal, it removes impurities. And then they just took it a step further in Tennessee and added more charcoal to it. So essentially what it gives us, what charcoal mellowing gives us an extra 2 years of maturation in a barrel. So it gives us a lot of time in the barrel. It gives us an acceleration of removing corn oils out of the molecule chain. Is bourbon always a new oak, and does Jack Daniels Tennessee whiskey? No, so it's an American law set in Congress in the 70s. You have to use new handcrafted barrels, okay, in production. And essentially what a barrel is, it's like a lung. It's breathing in, it's breathing out, a maximum flavor. So we want maximum flavor in a short space of time. Because what you're looking at here, folks, is one of our rick houses. Now in Tennessee, it's hot. So if you come in, let's see if I'll go the next picture down. But essentially on the bottom floors, that temperature be 30 degrees. And now we're going to try single barrel whiskey. This comes from the top of that warehouse, right at the top there, okay? And that's what we call our angel's roost. This is where our angels live, and they have a great party. And we'll use a lot of whiskey through evaporation. So a new crafted barrel, I suppose the best analogy is a cup of tea, hot water, tea bag it, big explosion of flavor, okay? And you're getting a great cup of tea. Try and use that tea bag again. You're not getting all that flavor. So a new barrel is giving maximum flavor in a very, very short space of time. So yeah, we'll use a new barrel. Then we'll sell it to Scotland and Ireland, Tabasco hot sauce. Rum producers love our barrels. So people say they don't like Jack Daniels. Well, unfortunately, we've done all the marinating for all the Scotch producers. Well, a lot of them. So this is our barrel crew. You can see everything's done by hand. It's our #1 injury thing in a distillery. Oh shit, sorry. Let's taste some whiskey. So I'm talking, let's get onto our second whiskey here. So Jack Daniels single barrel. So let's smell single barrel now. Oh, if you got it in it, if you're tasting it, of course, please drink responsibly. But when you're trying single barrel, smelling it, it's going to be very different to Gentleman Jack. It's going to be more wood driven. It's going to be more cedar oak and more spicy, more bolder. For me, I like drinking Jack Daniels single barrel straight up on the rocks. I love these in drinks like old fashioned. So Joe, I know, is going to make an old fashioned on Woodford Reserve a bit later. But you know what we got here is a bolder style of Jack Daniels. I always, if people are drinking a lot of Scotch, this is a great one because Scotch drinkers or spirit drinkers, like cognac drinkers, are going to really gravitate towards a single barrel. This comes from one single barrel. Like you see one of these cats are rolling on front of you. Everything we do after the other Jack Daniels, we really mingle it between 100 and 150 barrels to create a consistent flavor profile. But single barrel is always going to be inconsistent. So single barrel comes from one 200-liter barrel. So you are going to have a bit of inconsistencies on single barrel coming through. So let's taste single barrel. I'm talking so much, I'm not even drinking whiskey. So cheers, you all. Happy Wednesday. And if anybody wants some rugby tips, no, I'm joking. Don't ask me. Yeah, so a nice robust style of Jack Daniels. It's going to have more of that mocha coffee, spice and chocolate. Man, it's good. 90 proof, 45%. So it's higher in ABV than the rest of the portfolio. The rest of the portfolio sits about 40. So just a bit more spice and a bit more flavor in there. But, you know, all Jack Daniels has got great flavor. So, hey, Joe, is anybody up for another highball out there? I don't know how people are trekking on their first highball. We might just see on the crowd how we're going. Thumbs up if we're ready for another highball. Everyone's still going on their first one. Yeah, we another thumbs up for another one. Yes, Kiwis have arrived. Good to see. Please drink responsibly. No, no pressure to have a drink. So, hey, Joe, let's throw it over yourself and show folks how to make a another highball on one of my favorite in the portfolio, Jack Daniel's Old Number 7, and we'll get you to make one. So if anybody would like another highball, like I said, no pressure. We'll send these recipes to you afterwards. So, Joe, over to you to make a second highball there, Joe.
All right, so we're gonna use Old Number 7, like you said, and we're gonna use a little bit of that yuzu lemonade. So this one kind of has like a little funny twist to it. So there's a cocktail known as the Lynchburg Lemonade, and as Grant told us earlier, the county in which Jack Daniel's made is a dry county. So years before, when you would do a distillery tour, at the end of the tour, they would give you a glass of lemonade because you wasn't allowed to drink at that time. So we're gonna take that, we're gonna put a little twist on it, put a little Asian flair, and use some yuzu. So very simple cocktail. We're gonna add ice to our glass once again. Just get it nice and cold. Like I said, Singapore weather, lots of ice is always good for highballs. Fill her up.
Yeah, Joe, I always say ice McDonald's style, and I think ice makes ice cold, and more ice is better because less ice, you're going to get more dilution. More ice is better. So you want to balance that dilution level. So, yeah, ice McDonald's style if you can. You remember, you're always getting in that same amount of booze in there. Sorry, Joe, I interrupted you. Over to you, bud.
No, that's exactly it. McDonald's style is the best way. They fill the cup all the way up before they add any other ingredients. So we're just going to add our Old Number 7. Like I said, just like last time, or like you said, 2/3 of a glass. I'm going to go ahead and try not to spill it all over myself this time. I'm going to go with about 45 ml. At this point, I'm going to add just another ice cube since my melt's a little bit settled down. Like I said, more is better. Then we're just going to add the lemonade. Simple.
Yeah, for me, American whiskey, ginger ale, lemonade, fresh apple juice. I love like Granny Smith. You've got one of those juices, at home. Apple juice with Jack Daniel works exceptionally well. Lemonade, epic. I was kind of bummed. I visited Jack Daniel's first time in '96, and we could only get lemonade, but maybe that was hydration after Nashville. So Joe, that looks delicious. I need to make myself one of those too.
Yeah.
So yeah, really
stir always helps along as well. Yeah. And then just garnish it with
highballs. It's sort of, again, lower ABV. You can drop it, instead of 30 ml Jack Daniels, drop it to 20. So you want to drop it too. It works quite well with a bit of a lower ABV too. It works exceptionally well. I think because that flavor is going to stand up so well, isn't it, Joe?
Yes, it's going to stand up really well. And it also works the other way if you're looking for a higher ABV drink.
Here comes the American.
I like to just finish my yeah, right. Just gonna finish it off with a little lemon, and then it's good to go for that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Joe. Cheers, everybody. Obviously, be mindful. This is now your second unit of alcohol. We as Joe alluded to, if you come visit us in the US, they do pour a mean pour, but obviously. And Joe, like if people don't have the jiggers at home, Joe say this is a jigger used in most professional bars. Measuring spoons are perfect. Or Joe, I think you mentioned a tablespoon. A tablespoon is what you use at home.
Yeah, a tablespoon is 15 ml, and then a teaspoon is 5 ml. So they kind of are the only two you really need. Just 3 or 4 tablespoons, and you're right where it should be.
Rockstar. No, I love it. Okay, well, let's get some the first prize out the way. So the first prize of the day is a signed Springbok. No, I'm joking. We'll leave that one down. This has become a lucky jersey for me again, along with Susie's recipe book. We'll send you Susie's special hits from '95. We've got a special spaghetti bolognese. No, let's get on to the first prize. So how we're going to work it in the chat function, I'm going to ask the question. Whoever types their name first, we'll ask that question to yourself. And if you get it wrong, we'll pass it on to the second one. So so the first question of the night, and the prize is a bottle of Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack. If I'm not mistaken, we have a bottle of Gentleman Jack up for grabs. The first prize tonight is a bottle of Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack. So the question is, so fastest fingers, get your keyboards ready. Whoever nails it, gets ready to roll, and then we'll ask the question. What is the grain bill and mash bill of Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey? What is the grain bill of Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey? A G. Oh, no, hold on. Sorry. Sue was first up. Sue was fast fingers. So, Sue, we'll take you off mute, and you've got a chance to win a bottle of Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack. Let's roll. Come on, Sue. You can type it in. I think we've kept you on mute. Monica's is the assassin on the keyboard there itself, but we'll get you to type it in. 80-12-8. Yes, it's bang on. 80 corn, 8 rye, 12 barley. So Sue, we'll get your details. Oh, that was Steve in there. So Steve, thanks for giving the question to Sue. Done. Sue, you're a winner. Thanks, Steve. Roller. Gee, I really need to get some glasses. Hey, wow, this is bad. So Steve, good on you. I'm glad I've still got a job. So my boss is online, so that's good. So that's the first prize down. What do we think of the single barrel? Delicious. How are you going on those highballs? Again, American whiskey and cocktails works really well. And Joe, what are your thoughts on American whiskey and cocktails? Where are you seeing this resurgence coming through?
For me, American whiskey and cocktails go hand in hand. When you think about the most recent cocktail revolution, American whiskey was really at the forefront of that. If you think about even in the golden era of cocktails back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, American whiskey was the forefront of the cocktails then as well. So they're kind of like two peas in a pod, as they like to say.
Yeah. And I think if you go to the world's top 50 bars, you have a great spread of them in Singapore from Manhattan bar right through. On their biggest selling cocktail will be in their top 10 selling drinks across the world. Will be American whiskey. So from an old fashioned to an old fashioned right through to Manhattans and so forth. So you'll see a bigger percentage of cocktail list on there. So. Rach, thanks for the tip. I'm getting this tech on that, so thank you for that heads up. So let's move on, and we'll finish up Jack Daniel's. And for me, for us, it's all about flavor in the US. And just to finish up with Jack Daniel's, you can see on this is our flavor wheels, and we'll have a look at these flavor wheels. We just finished on the single barrel, and in the US, in American whiskey, we'll talk about 5 zones of flavor: wood, grain, sweet aromatic, spice, and fruit. And the single barrel, because it's so influenced by oak, you're going to have bigger percentage of rich oak and cedar. But what you're going to get in American whiskey is always that beautiful vanilla and spice coming through, brown sugar, butterscotch. So this is a single barrel flavor wheel that's it just gives you that sort of a glimpse of our flavor profile. And it works exceptionally well straight up or in these spirit forward cocktails. This is our Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 flavor wheel, and this is the last whiskey we'll try before we move on to some bourbon. So if you've got some Old No. 7, this is our iconic black label, the one that Jack founded his distillery back in the day in 1866. So as you can see on the Jack Daniel's flavor wheel, it's very balanced. For me, Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 is the most balanced whiskey we do. All of our recipes, apart from our rye whiskey, all our grain bills are exactly based off Old No. 7. Gentleman Jack, where it varies is we mellow that product twice through the charcoal mellowing for a second run after barreling for the Gentleman Jack, for example. Single barrel comes from one single barrel from the top of the warehouse, so it's going to be more spicy. But Old No. 7 is a combination of barrels from the top of the warehouse, those spicy barrels, those honey pot barrels in the middle of the warehouse, and more of those lighter barrels in the bottom of the warehouse. So Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 is this beautiful combination of balance and flavor across those sweet aromatics. So pour yourself a bit of Old No. 7. Like I said, this is one of these brands from bikers to bankers, from fine establishments to questionable joints. Sinatra was the cat. People who know Frank Sinatra, we were a small regional brand, 200,000 case brand in the 50s. Sinatra got on stage. Oh, actually, the story goes, he was with a friend of his, Jackie Gleason, in New York City. Jackie, they were having a drink, and Frank's, I've got some issues. And he goes, let me pour you some whiskey, Frankie. And he poured in this slug of this Tennessee whiskey. Frank had a sip of it, and he said, hell, what the hell's that? And Frank said, or Jackie said it, Frank, that's Jack Daniel's Tennessee. Hell, I've never heard of it. So Frank, wanted to get some more of this Jack Daniel whiskey. So he phoned the Brown-Forman company and put him onto a guy called Angelo. Angelo Lucchese was based out of Chicago, our first ever salesperson. Jack Daniel wasn't sold anywhere outside the US until the 80s. Angelo was our first sales guy. He gave Angelo a call. Italian-American. It went on like a house on fire. From that day, Frank used to get up on stage and say, "Good evening, folks. My name is Frank Sinatra, and this is Jack Daniels from Lynchburg, Tennessee, the nectar of the gods." And Frank, when he died, he was put to rest in a bottle of, with a bottle of Jack Daniels Old No. 7, a pack of dimes, and a pack of smokes. So he went to the afterlife with one of his favorite friends, Jack Daniels Old No. 7. And in fact, we made a special thanks to him with Sinatra Select. You'll start seeing through, but we have this affiliation. So we were the small regional brand, 200,000 case. Jack Daniel whiskey was an allocation until 1984. We couldn't make enough whiskey because we always believe in every day we make it the best we can. And it just became this iconic pop culture, brand from, Sinatra through the Stones and so forth. And you saw that in that snap going forward. So that's Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey in a nutshell. We've got a couple of prizes left to go in a couple of minutes. So I just got to quickly jump in the car. We're going to go from Lynchburg, Tennessee, and we're going to drive 4 hours north to Woodford Reserve. And we're just going to talk about a Kentucky bourbon. So we talk about Jack Daniels, following all those principles of corn, rye, malted barley. But why Jack Daniels is a Tennessee whiskey and not a bourbon is because of charcoal mellowing. At Woodford Reserve, the last whiskey we're going to try today in your packs, this is a Kentucky bourbon. So essentially, we'll use corn, we'll use rye, we'll use barley, just like at Jack Daniels. But most traditional bourbons, just like Woodford Reserve, won't use charcoal mellowing, okay? But what we'll do, we'll increase that rye grain to a high percentage. Jack Daniels will use 80% corn, 8% rye, 12 barley. At this particular product we're going to try, we use 72% corn, so less of that mellow entry point and more spice mid palate, 18% rye, okay? And then that 10% malted barley. So that's going to give you more sort of spice to the product. So this is the difference between Tennessee whiskey and a bourbon. So let's throw some in your glass. Finish your single barrel, put some aside. Obviously be mindful of what you're drinking. Love a bit of single barrel. So now we're going to go from Tennessee to Kentucky, and please keep a bit in your glass. So we're going to wrap up in about 8 minutes or so. But Joe, at the end of this course, is going to show you how to make a classic old-fashioned, one of the oldest registered cocktails out there on Woodford Reserve. Okay, so we're going to pour just a touch of Woodford Reserve in your glass. So this is a Kentucky bourbon. We also have a few in this family. So let's get that up to our nose. Let's smell that Woodford Reserve, and let's see what we think. So what we're going to get here now is a bit more of that spice coming through on the front end, okay? And you're going to get more of that rye spice coming through on the Woodford Reserve. Let me bring my chat box up so I can see if there's any questions. So there's a Richie McCall. What a legend that guy was, Richie McCall, Russell. Yeah, there was another guy, Carlos Spencer. He put us to the sword in the 90s. That's the last time I've ever bet in sport, by the way. I was in the Walkabout Covent Garden, London. Sorry, I've gone away. And it was Carlos Spencer who put us to the sword in 1998 or 97. I can't remember. My Kiwi mate said, double or nothing, Granny. Anyway, we're going off track. We'll never bet on sport again. So let's get on to bourbon. So bourbon's going to have that vanilla and toffee and butterscotch coming through. Now, this is now going to be a bit more spicy. Let's get that around our cockles and see what we think. You're going to have that smoothness of the corn coming through front palate, and you're going to have that nice bit of spice coming through from that rye. So this makes a great, spirit-forward cocktail, like an old-fashioned coming through. It's great on the rocks, straight up. I even love this with ginger ale or ginger beer. Any of these mixes you tried tonight from our friends at Imperial work exceptionally well coming through. So just to give you a glimpse, we've been distilling at this property, or there's been whiskey made at this property since 1812. We've only started making this particular product at this distillery since the 90s. So it's more of a contemporary style brand coming through. We'll skip through the sources of flavor quite quickly, but just like at Jack Daniel's, you need great water. We have a iron-free water, just like at Jack Daniel's. We're using a high percentage of rye grain, so we're using 18% rye. Fermentation, we use these old cedar wood fermenters, so it's going to give you a nice floral beer coming off, almost like a nice Weiss beer vibe coming off the fermentation. Just like at Jack Daniel's, we're using white American oak coming through. So you're going to get all those beautiful flavors coming from that white American oak barrel. And what's different for Woodford compared to our counterparts in the US, we're using copper pot stills from Scotland. So you're going to get more bolder flavors coming through. Mark, you're on the rocks straight. You know, I think if you're adding dilution to any product, so everybody on the call, if you're adding ice or water to it, what that's going to do is this is going to open up the product a bit more. In fact, we'll actually, at the distillery, we'll taste it 20%. So adding a splash of water or rocks, I personally like that. It'll just open up the product, but everyone has a different sort of thing to taste. So whatever floats your boat, but I personally like a nice bigger, a splash of water, rock ice into a glass works really, really well. So what do we think of Woodford? Pretty tasty, isn't it? Pretty good stuff. So let's ask another question. We've got a couple of questions coming through. So it's a rugby question. So 24th of June, no, I'm joking. So what is the grain bill? What is the grain bill of Woodford Reserve? What is our grain bill that we use at Woodford Reserve? So fastest key, and G's on there. So G, yeah, that's for you. Spot on. That's coming to you. 72-18-10. So spot on. You will get a nice little a prize coming through for you. So awesome. Yeah. So G, that prize is for you. Spot on. So I'm going to open it up there, and I'll come off and I'll stop sharing my screen, and we'll throw it open to if there's any Q&A questions we might have, and I think we might have one more prize. So let me just come up there, and I think we have got one more prize coming through, and we'll open it up any questions that people might have. So Monica, I'll put over to yourself as the host. Are you the host, back on the host there, Monica? Good. Yeah. Have to hand it over. Are you good? Right. So any questions on American whiskey? I'm just mindful of time. Myself and Joe are going to be here on the call afterwards. So I know I'm just mindful of time. You know, we're quite close to the hour. But as you can see, American whiskey, just to wrap up from our side, American whiskey is that combination of great grains. You know, we're making product with great craft and credentials, and we're following a very great tradition. Question on Old Number 7. Where does it come from, Old Number 7? There's a question there. Yeah, so Jack Daniel's is the oldest registered distillery in the United States. Nobody knew why Jack Daniel called it Jack Daniel's Old Number 7, and 7 is not an indication of age, but it's more of a trademark label. There were a couple of great stories that I've heard over the years. People say he left home at the age of 7, but he lied about his age, so he probably left at 10. Jack Daniel never married. They said, so he called it Old Number 7 after his 7th girlfriend. That's probably why he never married. With his 7th recipe, 7 was his lucky number from that perspective. The best one I've ever heard was from Chris Fletcher, our assistant master distiller, and his grandfather was the 5th master distiller in the 50s who took the property over from the Motlows. And the story goes that Jack Daniel sent a barrel out of Nashville to St. Louis to a bar, a hotel. The operator wrote him a letter and said, Jack, I haven't received this whiskey barrel. Jack said, shit, I'm so sorry. I sent him another barrel on the number 7 train out of Nashville, and it crossed over at the stop. And what these cats had done, they had this first whiskey that they weren't sure it was going to, and then they got the paperwork and they put these 2 barrels together and they chalked it up. The first barrel they chalked up new number 7 because it's coming on the number 7 train, and the second barrel old number 7. They sent both the barrels to the bar in St. Louis. A few months later, Jack Daniel Distillery, Jack got a letter from the operator saying, Jack, thanks very much. We've got both barrels, by the way. We want to pay you for the barrels. And Jack said, no worries. You just pay me for the one. That's all good. And the guy said, I want to order another barrel. But I said, I don't want the new number 7. I want the old number 7. So Jack, you know, knowing that, sort of being the Steve Jobs of the time, knew how to market his product. But essentially that product was sitting there for a bit longer, getting a bit more maturity, and hence calling old number 7. But we truly won't know. What happened to the business during Prohibition, Sue? Essentially, Lem, who Jack left his business to, his nephew, kept it open, kept the trademark opening. It was closed for about 30 years. We didn't make whiskey at Jack Daniel's from essentially about 1915 to about 1938. The first whiskey came off the stills back in 38. But Lem was a mule trader around town. He kept the business happening and rocking for that time. So, but we've only made that whiskey, you know, from 38 onwards. So, yeah, great questions there. So I'm just mindful of time, Rachel. I might just throw it over to yourself, Rachel. And like I said, myself and Joseph will be here. Joseph's going to show how to make an old-fashioned. So, Rachel, I'll throw it back to yourself. And hopefully we've answered some questions. Like I said, we'll be on for a while. So, Rachel, back to yourself.
Yeah, well, I was just going to wrap up and thank you, Grant, and thanks, Joseph, on behalf of the New Zealand Chamber, and thanks for sharing your knowledge today and helping us create a couple of drinks. But yeah, and the other thing is, in your packs that you received, you would have got a little piece of paper that had some QR codes on it, and they take you through to a Lasmore site where you can actually get a discount on. I think someone, was it Steve, was asking about where can we buy the bigger bottles if we can't go duty-free shopping anymore. Or yeah, you can jump on that Lasmore site and get a bit of a discount with that QR code from tonight. So look, I guess the official part of tonight has finished, but Grant and Joe are going to stay on, make another drink. So anyone who wants to stay, please do. And yeah, and enjoy. I'm sure not everyone has got through the four wee bottles by now, but thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having us, Rachel. Yeah, we appreciate it. Great for seeing you. Like I said, we'll be around, stick around. If everybody wants to see how to make an old-fashioned at home, a classic American cocktail, I'm going to hand it over to Joe and, you know, keep the questions going, and, you know, happy to answer anything. So, yeah, thanks for having us, the Chamber, and really appreciate it. And I think we had one more prize to give away.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't we?
Yeah, there should be one more, shouldn't there?
Yep. And yeah.
I'll let you decide how you pop that one out, Grant.
Yeah, so we'll go back to Jack Daniel, I think. And so what makes Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack different from the rest of the portfolio? So there's one extra step that we do at Jack Daniel's Gentleman Jack. Yeah, so there we go. Mark had it. So double mellowed. Yeah, so double mellowed products. So Mark on the money. So your last prize winner, and we'll leave the Springbok jersey for you. We'll just get your size. No, I'm joking. It's one of the portfolio products. So yeah, thanks, Mark, and we'll make sure. I think Monica, you got the prize winners, haven't you, coming through? Yeah. So the Chamber crew will sort out your prizes for you. So yeah, if you got places to be, we won't hold you up. But I'm going to hand over to Joe. So if everyone wants to see how to make an old-fashioned at home, Joe, over to yourself just to show the folks how to make a great American cocktail.
Perfect. So the old-fashioned is the quintessential cocktail of all time, in my opinion. It's actually the original cocktail. It's pretty simple if you break it down, but the definition of a cocktail, if you look it up, was first defined back in 1803 as any spirit with sugar, water, and bitters. So I'm going to take a cheat way and use this Woodford Reserve old-fashioned syrup. So this already has my sugar and bitters with it. And that's going to be about 5 to 10 ml of this. So if you don't have this here, you can use about 7 ml of syrup and then add you a couple dashes of bitters. If you do have this, this makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to have like a bunch of bottles and around. So we're just going to put that right into the glass. So we're going to make this cocktail right into the glass. After that, we're going to go with our next step, which is going to be the spirit. And I'm going to go with Woodford Reserve. We said great bourbon, well balanced, makes it perfect for an old fashioned. And we're going to go in with about 60 ml, which is going to be about 4 of these here. I'm just going to pour that right in. 4 tablespoons. And then after that, we're going to add our ice, and then the ice is going to add the component that is the water. So that's essential to every cocktail. And then we'll go with that. So we're going to be diluting. We want to go with a lot of ice here. McDonald's style, as he likes to say. I'm going to steal that one, I think, in the future. And then we just have to stir. Fancy bartenders have those cocktail spoons. If you're sitting at home, I just like to use a butter knife. Could use your finger if you want. It's not the most sanitary if you're making drinks for other people right now, but a butter knife is perfectly fine. You're just going to kind of agitate it a little bit, get it rotated, and that's going to kind of dilute the cocktail. So it gets nice and cold. Right? After that, you could drink it as is. I like to add a little bit of a garnish. I go with the orange peel, just potato peeler. As I tell people, or my staff back in the day, you always rotate the fruit, not the peel. Otherwise, you end up losing fingertips. It's not the most pleasurable thing when you're using a lot of lime juice. And then you're just going to kind of express the orange right over top.
Here is a joke.
What's
you
that?
Don't want a blood cocktail either. No, that's not fun either. Right. Blood in cocktail?
No. Yeah, nobody likes blood in the cocktail. After you express the orange oils over, you're just going to slide it right in, and then you'll have yourself an old-fashioned. Right.
Cheers, Joe.
Make sure I did a good job here.
Yeah, so a real simple cocktail to make, isn't it, Joe? I think the mistake, the first time I made an old-fashioned was sugar cube and bitters, and it was like a mission. But I think with the Woodford syrup, it's a perfect match made in heaven. And we'll share how to make these easy cocktails for you all at home, and how to make a batch of cocktails. So if you're going to have a party, you can batch them into, bigger batches with the syrup. So it's pretty simple. You can just punch them out for, your cocktail guests before and after. And so it makes making a very simple cocktail, complex cocktail, very easy. So I think that's the beauty of, simple recipes like an old fashioned going through. So, so we'll just see if there's any other questions on American whiskey. But yeah, feel free to come off mute if you've got any questions. Feel free to punch away or ask any questions. All good. Joe, have you got anything up your rocket there? Any other cocktails ready to go? No.
No tricks up my sleeves. Definitely just going to enjoy this as the Wednesday night moves on.
Oh, thanks guys for joining us. We appreciate it. If there's any other questions you might have, we're happy to answer. Thanks for joining. I think we're all questions up there. James and boys, you enjoying your highballs there? I think. Yeah, you're going great guns. Yeah, awesome. Everyone, what do we think of that highball with the lemonade? I think that's a winner chicken dinner, isn't it?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Joe, are you on that highball there, or you polishing off the old fashioned?
I'm going to be on the old fashioned. It's the first of the night, if you will.
Yeah. So Max, a question to you there. When's Old Forester rye arriving in Asia? We've just launched it in the US. So I would say it's probably a couple of years off for the Asian market. But if you love your rye, we have a phenomenal product from Jack Daniel's rye, which is just epic. This is like, man, this is just, if you love your rye whiskey, Max, Jack Daniel's rye, which is a 70% rye entry point. We also have a Woodford Reserve rye, which is available in your market, which is a old Prohibition style rye recipe, 53% rye, 33 corn, and 16 barley. So we have two great expressions in your market. Actually, we've got another one, which is Jack Daniel's single barrel rye. So we actually have three in the Asian market. So we have a single barrel rye, which is that 70% rye entry point, everyday rye, or old school Woodford Reserve rye. So yeah, you're right. If you have keep an eye for the Old Forester rye, it's a 100 proof, 50%, pretty epic coming through. So the grain bill on Jack Daniel's Rye Max is 70% rye, 18% corn, and 12 malts barley. So higher rye content, but we are using that beautiful malt to for natural enzymes. There are a lot of monolithic style rye, which are 100%. When you see 100% rye, they're using artificial enzymes. So yeah, these products are always using. And yeah, so if you want a pre-prohibition style Woodford, that's epic. If you want a bolder style with that charcoal mellowing coming through. What other American cocktails are trending? For us, the highball is this twist on a Japanese classic. Being highball is and these highballs are certainly trending right now. The old fashioned is the #1 consumed cocktail in the world's top 50 bars. The one that Joe just showed you. So the #1 consumed drink in your top bars around the world is an old fashioned, obviously made on Woodford, Joe. Things like within the top 10 drinks, when you look at it, things like Manhattans are really going well. Things like Boulevardiers, which is a twist on a Negroni. So if you love Negroni, you take out the gin component. So Negroni is gin, Campari, sweet vermouth. My favorite is pretty much American whiskey. Take out the gin and replace it with American whiskey. That's a great aperitivo style cocktail. And that's a really simple one to make, and I can actually make one for you now, which is a great one to entertain at home. So, in fact, we'll make it on your single barrel product that you've got in front of you. So, all you need for this one, it's pretty straightforward. A low ball glass. Again, get your ice in the glass. Whatever you finish with the glass. As long as you finish up with loads of ice McDonald's style, you can add your ice in later. Everybody has their own jam. Essentially what you want to do is do equal parts. I left my measuring spoon, so you want to do about 30 ml of your single barrel product, which I put there. So yeah, we don't have to measure. We've got our measuring tool there. So you're going to go 30 ml single barrel. We'll go 40. And then we're going to go... I actually like going heavier on the American whiskey on a Boulevardier. So we're going to go 40 ml of a Jack Daniel's single barrel. And then we're going to go 20 ml of like a Campari style, or Campari, 20 ml. And that's going to give you a bitter element coming through. And then we're going to add in a fortified wine. We use some sweet vermouth. So this is a really simple cocktail. So if you love Negronis, you're going to love Boulevardiers. So this is a trending cocktail. So you got, and then just grab your little spoon or your knife at home, or I'm going to use a pink sort of stirrer, whatever, a salmon stirrer. Just give it a little stir, mix all that diluted with ice, and then you're just going to finish that off with just some orange. So you can either do a twist like my fancy colleague there in Singapore, Joe, with twist. I'm just going to do a slice and a slice of orange, a couple of slices, and you just edge the glass with a bit of citrus and then just drop it in. And if you want a bit more citrus, you can do 2 and drop it in. And there you go. It's just this really simple aperitivo style cocktail, twist on the Negroni being a Boulevardier. So simple, so easy. Whew. That's tasty. Just smells like a Springbok victory. Bad jokes. I tell you what, my best rugby story ever was the '95 World Cup, and I was working in a sports store in Cape Town, and in walked this gentleman who needed a pair of boots, and his name was Jonah, and probably the biggest chap I've ever seen in my life, and the nicest guy I've ever met. Anyway, I got some tickets, and I was on the 22. And it was England versus New Zealand in the, I think it was semis. Yeah, it was semi-final in Newlands. And I was on the 22. And I don't know if you ever remember, there was Underwood went for the tackle. Lobo ran over him like a tractor. And I was right there drinking my beer, my warm castle. I said, how the fuck are we going to stop this guy? I don't know. We called Susie and she stopped him for sure. But if we didn't have Susie, it would have been all over Red Rover. But I tell you what, that moment when he ran over Underwood like a tractor, that was probably a very special moment. Firstly, to meet this gentle giant, and then just to see this gentle giant running like a tractor over Underwood. It was incredible. And yeah, we had to call in the bomb squad, Susie. So thank you, Susie. I know you guys probably didn't didn't enjoy that time, but yeah, certainly. Anyway, enough rugby talk. I'm probably throwing tomatoes at the screen by now. Sorry, Kiwi Nation. Yeah, enough chat on that. Skull, no, Sue. No, drink responsibly. We'll have a sip on that one.